The cello really influences the way I think. I mean, everyone, there's lots of different ways to, compose music. And I engage in a lot of different ways of composing music. Some is at the piano, some of it is actually away from any instrument, just things pop in my head and stuff like that. But I would say because I'm first and foremost a cellist, I think it influences the way I hear music and the way I think. I think as a composer, I think of things I would not have thought of on the piano at the cello. A panic originally, yeah. not because of writing for VC2, but how do I take something from Beethoven and make it my own? I mean, you have to admit that's kind of a strange assignment in some ways, because it raises it just raises all sorts of questions. What do you do stylistically? If you're going to quote something, how much of it are you going to quote? How identifiable is going to be the quote? So it was a real head scratcher until I actually picked the part from the C major sonata that I did. Otherwise, it actually would have been. I was so happy that no one else took it. As a cellist, I mean, I think this is historically correct. Like, Beethoven was the first guy to really respect the cello the way it deserved. It's the first really, even I don't forget the opus numbers. What are the early sonatas?
5.
Opus 5? Yeah. Even those, it's really equal, between cello and piano. So for me as a cellist, it's really important because when I think about the music, even jazz music that I write, even things that involve rhythm section and stuff, there's some little part of Beethoven's view that everyone has a role, but you can swap roles a lot when you write music. Like the drummer, you don't have to always have ding, ding, ding. You can really tell them to do something specific, and as I don't know, it's just the idea of if you've got piano and cello, that they can have this amazing relationship back and forth. But with the commission from you guys, of course, it raised the interesting prospect of, well, now the piano's gone. So now what am I going to do? So that's also why I zeroed in on the particular part that I did. So Entsprechung means correspondence in German. So basically, what Beethoven is playing with in this, in this development section is the idea of echo. And other composers have done this before, but what I thought was so cool about it, and I've always thought it was so cool about this moment, and it sounded so avant-garde and modern, is that Beethoven noticed that echoes happen before you finish the initial shout. So there's really an overlapping and dovetail. And so that's what I decided to do is not use a Beethoven theme, but a Beethoven texture. So it's all about that texture. But it might get musically boring if exactly the same material was in the two cellos, right? And also, they also came to me because I'm writing for two identical instruments. So give them identical material offset by small time frames, but also vary it by having an analog to what the other guy played. So you guys trade stuff back and forth constantly, and sometimes it's exactly the same, and sometimes it's a little, I cheat, right? It's a little bit different, right? So that's the Entsprechung. It's kind of like shouting and then having the echo be not exactly what comes back at you. I know VC2, Brian and Amal, because they were both students of mine. They were both interested in exploring improvisation on the cello, and I'm sure they are still improvising to this day. I guess it was a little bit of a sort of jazz lesson context. they've probably moved beyond that. Don't know. So have I. I play a lot of not jazz improvising too. We kind of stayed in intermittent contact, and then I got this email one day about this amazing idea for a commission. So I was glad I was remembered. Actually, I don't think there's like anything really out of the ordinary. Like everything I wrote, I think is pretty common language for new music, and there's certainly bits of it. Actually, the bit we were going over with the fingering, like the bits of my improvising language. So that's maybe a little bit idiosyncratic stuff. Might creep into it, here and there. Yeah, really, this is about the genius of Beethoven's use of texture, and I would say the basic ingredients of this piece are this: something happening in one cello and immediately something identical to it, or pretty close. Like the average person might think it's the same thing happening at a close time interval in relationship to it. There's that element. There's fifths, which are directly a quote from Beethoven, are a constant there. That's Beethoven's maybe a little nod to the hurdy-gurdy tradition, who knows? But there's, the musette sort of thing. But so the fifths followed by, da-da-da-da. That is material used all the time, and that's from Beethoven. And the other thing that's in Beethoven, which is, in this sonata, is pauses, and his famous use of sort of abrupt dynamics. But Beethoven was one of the first guys who really understood how dramatic silence was in music, way before Cage. Little silences to interrupt the flow. So I built silences, into it also.